I'm really starting to realize that most of our suffering doesn't come from the initial experiences that we have themselves, but more so the stories that we keep telling ourselves about those experiences, right? Let's say something happened in our past. Let's say someone that was close to us hurt us or betrayed us, or we found ourselves in a certain relationship that was toxic, that was abusive. Maybe we got cheated on, so on and so forth, right? And based on those experiences, we continue to tell ourselves a certain narrative, right? We continue to tell ourselves the stories that, maybe we're not good enough. Maybe we're not worth more. Maybe this is all that I deserve from life, right? We keep telling ourselves so many different negative stories, right? And I think in doing so, we make ourselves the victim in our own stories rather than the author, right? I made a video probably a month ago, and in the video I talked about the dangers of blaming your life situations on other people, right? And in the video I said that when it comes down to something such as forgiveness, right? Forgiving yourself and forgiving others, forgiveness is really meant to reclaim your power. Forgiveness is meant to reclaim the power that we initially gave away because of those experiences, right? And in the video I said that it's impossible for you to give away the responsibility over your life and still hold the power to change your life, right? And I was saying that responsibility and power, they go hand in hand, because in order for you to have power, you must also have responsibility over your life, right? And I think in the same way, we constantly give away our power. In this same way, we constantly give away the power to make great change in our lives, right? And we continue to tell ourselves the same old stories, the same old narratives, and in doing so, we cause ourselves to be stagnant in our own lives, right? The other day I was even looking back at some of the experiences that I've had, right? And I began to realize how much of the past I was carrying with me to the present, right? And when I say how much of the past I was carrying with me to the present, what I mean is that how much of the same old narratives, the same old stories I was bringing with me to the present. And that was the very thing that was keeping me stuck in my life, right? And I think a lot of us, we constantly show up to life, we constantly go through life, and we allow ourselves to be defined by the experiences that happen to us, right? We continue to allow ourselves to be defined by the past instead of giving definition to our experiences. And when I say give definition to our experiences, what I mean is that we choose how we interpret our experiences. Instead of telling ourselves that, we're not good enough because this thing happened, we're not worthy because this thing happened, this thing means that I'm powerless, this thing means that I'm this or I'm that, and all these negative connotations that we place on our experiences, right? We can begin to define our experiences in a positive way. We can say to ourselves, I went through this situation, right? I didn't prefer to go through this, but I went through it. And I can't go back in the past to change it. I can't go back in the past to fix it. But what I can do is look at that experience, right? Look at that experience from an objective point of view, or as objective as we can, right? And say to ourselves, what lessons can I take away from that experience? What lessons can I pull from that initial experience and use it to move forward in the right way? Use it to move forward in my life, right? That's what I mean when I say that we can give definition to our experiences. We can reshape, we can reframe our experiences. And in reframing our experiences, we can begin to reclaim our lives. A lot of us go to the world and we constantly feel as if we're powerless. We constantly feel as if we don't have the ability or the choice to make change in our lives. And we make ourselves, a product of our experiences without realizing that we always have a choice, without realizing that we always have the power. Even in the times when we feel the most powerless, we still hold power. We still have a choice to make change in our lives, and that choice begins with reframing our experiences. That choice begins with realizing that we don't always have to be defined by our past experiences. We don't always have to show up to the present moment and bring the same narratives with us to the present. We don't always have to look at our lives and look at ourselves through the lens of our past. We have a choice. We always have a choice, right? We are always the author in our own story. We are always writing our own script. And if you don't like the current one, you can change it. If you don't like the current script, you can make a change to it, right? You don't have to always feel as if you have to carry your past around with you. And you have to keep seeing yourself through the same lens of your past. You don't have to. When it comes down to true change, change requires us to see ourselves in a new perspective. Change requires us to see ourselves in a new light, right? And if we keep looking at ourselves through the lens of our past, then how can we truly move forward? How can we grow? How can we evolve? How can we take control and power back over our lives, right? We have to realize that we always hold the power. Our life is always in our hands, right? Our life is always in our grasp. But so much what am I saying? So often than not, we give our life away to our experiences and to the things that happen to us. More often than not, we give our power away to the past. Right? We always have the choice to choose how we perceive our experiences. We always have the choice to choose how we use our experiences to move forward, instead of allowing them to keep us stagnant and pull us back to the same places that we're trying to escape from or trying to avoid, right? We always hold the power, right? And it begins with reframing our experiences. It begins with telling ourselves a new story. It begins with realizing that when it comes down to life, we always have a choice. We always hold power. But it begins with realizing that we don't always have to be a product of our experiences. And we don't always have to keep telling ourselves the same old stories, right? If you feel powerless, it's because you've turned your back on your power. You can reclaim it. You can make a change. Even in our darkest moments, we can choose how we use the darkness. Even in times when we're faced with difficulty, we can see the bright side of that difficulty. Even in the times when life rejects us, we can see beauty in that rejection. Even in times when things don't go our way, we can find the lessons behind the things that didn't work out for us, right? Even in times when we're faced with hatred from the world, we can choose love. We always have a choice, right? Life always gives us a choice. We don't have to keep telling ourselves the same old stories. We don't have to keep choosing the same old narratives. At any moment in time, we can reframe the stories that we tell ourselves. In any moment of time, we can choose how we interpret our experiences. But if we keep telling ourselves the same old stories, then we can never truly move forward with our lives. If we keep telling ourselves the same old narratives, then we're always going to be stuck reliving the past. And that's what we're doing. Right? That's what most of us are doing. We're constantly reliving our past experiences because we keep telling ourselves the same old stories. But once you realize that you always have the choice to change the script, you always have the choice to reframe your past experiences and use them to move forward with your life, giving them definition instead of being defined by them, then and only then we can reclaim our power. And then and only then we can truly move forward in our lives. So you have a choice, and it is a choice that you have to make. No one is coming to save us. No one can come into our lives and change our lives for us. Change begins with a personal choice. Change begins with recognizing that we're not products of external circumstances. We can choose how we interpret them. But if we give our power away by telling ourselves the same old stories, then we can never truly move forward in our lives. So change the story, change the script, reclaim your power, and allow yourself to move forward. Peace and blessings.